Hello, good day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to have 4 lectures today, and our focus is on the ancient world and the Bible. So there are many things when one reads the Bible, there are many things that you think you understand, concepts and ideas, but in actuality you don't really understand them because they go back to an ancient world that was very, very different from our own, totally radically different. They had a different way of thinking about things. And what we're going to do today in these 4 lectures is we're going to go back and see how these concepts developed, what it means, and so on. And I think it will give a totally different perspective on the Bible. So our first lecture is on the pillars of the earth. Well-known concept found in the Bible. So, okay, let's have a look at this, what we're going to talk about today. So there are different approaches to the question, can we still believe the Bible? There are various ways to consider the Bible. One is from a scientific perspective, another is from a hermeneutical perspective, also an archaeological perspective or a prophetic perspective. I've written about all of these things. I've written extended articles. On the first page you would see there's a link or the address to my blog, and you'll find some of those articles there. Today we focus on the ancient world perspective. That's what we're going to consider today. The 4 talks is the pillars of the earth, the mountain of the gods, the origins of Elohim, the biblical God, and the origin and fall of Satan. So these are the 4 lectures for today. Okay. So the ancient worldview, it's very different from the scientific worldview that we all know. Very, very different. You'll see today. Now, the question is, was it a primitive view of the world that had been proven wrong? One so often hear that people criticize the Bible, says it go back to a very primitive era. People didn't understand a lot of things. Most things they did not understand, so we can't take them serious. But is that really true? That's what we're going to look at today. So their view, in actual fact, was remarkably sophisticated. We'll see today. It was remarkably sophisticated. They took the celestial skies as point of departure. That's very, very important. They lived under the stars, and every night they looked upon the stars. And the stars had an enormous impact on their way of thinking about our world. So all the stories in the Bible are presented in the context of the ancient worldview. The whole Bible, everything in the Bible, is presented in the context of a worldview that is dramatically different from our own. Now I will first consider the garden stories. There are 2 of them, one in Genesis and one in Ezekiel. Now the main motives in the garden story of Genesis do not merely reflect an ancient setting in topography. So there's an ancient setting in which this story happens, and some people will take it historical, others will think it's just imaginary type of topography and so forth. So what I'm concerned with today is not really this question. I'm more concerned with the main motives that we find in this garden story. These are the trees, the rivers, the abode of God, the serpent, etc. That's the things I'm going to concentrate on today. Now the earthly topography reflects that of the greater cosmos. That's what we'll see today. So when we consider the earthly paradise, Adam and Eve, and so on, the context there reflects a larger context, a cosmic perspective. And that's quite important for what we're going to discuss today. So the earthly garden mirrors the heavenly paradise, which is beautifully seen in Ezekiel 28 and 31, and we'll consider this today. The first thing to consider is the world or the cosmic tree. You go on Google and you just search for world tree or cosmic tree, you'll find a lot of information. And this is where we'll start our talk today. Now the tree in the middle of the garden, if we read in Genesis, in the story in Genesis, the garden story, Genesis 2 and 3, we find this tree in the middle of the garden. Very exceptionally and a very strange tree. Now this tree, we'll see, interesting about it, is a tree with a snake. And a tree with a snake is actually a very important guide for us. because it agrees with the ancient representations of the cosmic tree with an eagle in the top and a snake at the bottom. So the snake in the tree is a very, very, very ancient motif. It's not something that is special to the Bible, definitely not. And there's a lot to consider here which I don't do today, because it falls slightly on a different aspect of discussion, for example, the snake and how we should take the speaking serpent, and so on, but that's not for today. There's another lecture where I discuss that. Now in Ezekiel's tree we find it's a cedar in the garden of God on the Lebanon mountains, and it's said to be in Eden, but now it's in the Lebanon. In Genesis it's in the east. It's an enormous tree. It's larger and more beautiful than all the other trees in the garden. It's an exceptional tree, very exceptional. Okay, so here we have the whole world is in the shadow of this tree. The whole world. Let's listen to Ezekiel. All the fowls of heaven made their nests in its boughs, and under its branches did all the beasts of the field bring their young, and under its shadow dwelt all great nations. And this is not merely a poetic expression of a great king. It's a particular symbol. It stands for something very specific that the poet has in mind. And this is the whole world is in its shadow. It's the cosmic tree. Here's a beautiful depiction. I just took a few depictions from the internet. And here we have the eagle in the top, the snake in the bottom. This is a Nordic one. Here's another interesting depiction of the world tree, and C.G. Jung. I enjoy listening to some of his things. He says, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Deep thought to think about. Okay, so let's proceed. Now the axis mundi, that's the axis of the world. So what we find is Ezekiel's description is not a mere metaphor for an Assyrian king's rule. It's not merely a metaphor. It's not just a symbol. We find the very same picture of such a tree in the Lebanon in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now the Epic of Gilgamesh is one of the most important ancient literary works. One of the most important. It comes from the ancient Middle East. It's the same worlds from which the biblical tradition originated. And in that epic, we find the very same picture of such a tree. A large tree, enormous tree, growing in the Lebanon, exactly as we find in Ezekiel. Now this tree represents the axis mundi, the axis of the world. If you look at the celestial skies, we saw the ancient peoples lived under the skies. Carefully observe them, the whole celestial sky rotates around the earthly observer. The earthly observer look at the sky, and you'll see early in the, just when the sun went down, shortly after that, you'll see some stars on the horizon in the east, and during the night it will move all around towards the other side of heaven. So it seems like heavens are circling around the earthly observer. The reason it is due to the Earth's rotation. Now, but there are 2 points that doesn't rotate, and that's in the north and in the south. The northern and southern poles of heaven. There are 2 points that actually stands still. It doesn't move. It looks actually like an egg, a large egg, and you're sitting in the middle of this egg, and on the top there's a point that stands still, that's not rotating. If you move slightly more south, it's a smaller circle and a larger circle. In the middle, it's very large, and moving further to the south, it's getting smaller again towards a point it stands there. It's looks like a large cosmic egg. That's what the heavens look like. An invisible axis stretches through these heavens, and the whole starry cosmos seems to be turning around this axis. It's the idea, that's the image that one gets from looking and living under the celestial skies. So that this is a projection of the Earth's axis into the northern and the southern skies. So the Earth is rotating, it's just a projection of the Earth's imaginary axis into the skies, and that's why we have this image in the heavens. So now this projection of this axis, this cosmic axis, this axis mundi, this was the basis for the image of a cosmic tree. Okay, so this is the basis, this is where they found, that's the origin for this motive. This axis defines above the earth and also below the earth. So the heaven is above and the underworld is below. So that's why we can speak about above and below. If you really think about the scientific worldview, you can say the heavens is above us. It's above everywhere. Where's the underworld? Is it in the earth? You see, we don't have the same idea, it's the same concept. But once we have this cosmic axis, it's easy to understand where is above and where is below. And that's the idea that they have. That's the way they understood the world. So here's a very nice depiction. Here we have the axis mundi. There we have the earth. This is earth, but we have here is the egg, the cosmic egg. Earth is right over there. You are here. And this is the zodiac. This is on this cosmic egg. There's a zone in which the sun, the moon, and the planets move. This is this circle over there, more or less. And the 4 directions, which we talked about just now. And here, towards this direction, north is up, the upper world, and south, below, it's the underworld. So this is the cosmic context. This is how they order their world. Now let's have another look at Ezekiel's tree. Interesting about this tree is that it was cut down. So it's not only that we have this massive tree with the whole world, all the nations in its shadow. This tree had been cut down. Now what does this mean? So let's just first read about the way that it was cut down. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, because you have increased in height, and it set up its among the thick boughs, and its heart was lifted up in its height, therefore I will deliver it into the hand of the mighty one of the nations, and he shall surely deal with it. And aliens, the most terrible of the nations, shall cut it down and left it. Its branches have fallen on the mountains and in the valleys. Its boughs lie broken by all the rivers of the land, and all the peoples of the earth has gone from under its shadow and left it. It's a dramatic description of this moment when this cosmic tree is cut down. Thus says the Lord God, in the day when it went down to hell, I caused mourning. I made the nations shake at the sound of its fall, when I cast it down to hell together with those who descend into the pit. So it was, its branches stretched into the highest heavens, but it will be cut down and fall into hell, into the depths of the pit. So why was the tree cut down? What does it mean? So when the axis mundi is pointed at the polar stars, it has a very special significance. So the axis points towards the northern and the southern celestial skies. But sometimes it happens in history that this axis actually points to a particular star. Then that particular star stands still, whereas all of heaven rotates. This particular star does not move. It stands still. It looks like a solid something connected with the earth. And that's at very important significance to them. So the polar star does not move with the other stars. It gives the impression, the distinct impression of a solid pillar or a massive tree. That's where they got the idea of a solid pillar standing right through the heavens, as can be seen by the stable polar star. Now the axis mundi actually moves slowly through the celestial skies. That's what we'll just now, and that is due to the polar and the equinoxial precession of the stars. So the axis mundi moves through the polar star. Slowly but steadily, with time, it moves through the polar star. And this gives the impression of the tree being cut down. So there's a moment when it was directing at the polar star. It looks like a tree, massive tree, but then it moves through it. And that had the idea that it was cut down and the tree fell. So that's where they got this image. So the polar and equinoxial precession, that's the reason why the axis mundi is cut down. The sun's position at mid-spring, one can take any position, but this was what was taken as reference point by the ancients. At mid-spring, precesses slowly in the opposite direction of its movement through the zodiac. So in the morning, if you look at the sun where it rises, just before it rises, it's in a particular sign in the zodiac. Mid-spring, it was on a particular sign. Now slowly but steadily, through time, it moves within the zodiac. In 72 years, it moves 1 degree on the horizon. On average, 2,200 years it takes in every, it spends time in every constellation. And in total, 2,200 times 12 is 26,400 years that it takes to complete the whole circle, one circle. And that's, in reality, it's actually 25. Now, 20 years, that's just more or less as the ancients sort of calculated it. So let's look at this picture. So here is the Earth, there is the zodiac, here's the egg, the cosmic egg, there's the northern pole of heaven, there's the southern pole of heaven, there's the projection of the Earth's axis towards the north, towards the south. Now this axis moves through the heavens slowly. So what we find is this northern pole moves in a circle, southern pole in a circle. That's a polar precession. And the equinoxial precession is what we find is this vernal equinox slowly moves through the zodiac. And that again, the total time that it takes is about 26,000 years. So it's a very slow movement through this, of the celestial skies. So when this northern pole, celestial pole, is pointed on the polar star, it seemed like a pillar standing stable in the heavens. And when it moved through it, it seemed like it was cut down and it fell from its high position. And this image is extremely important for many things we're going to discuss today in the other lectures also. Now, precession was known to the ancients. The first scientific description of this cycle is credited to Hippocrates. It was in the 2nd century BC, but earlier cultures incorporated aspects of the phenomenon into myth, exactly the precession of the equinoxial and celestial points, which appear to move backwards against the fixed stars by about 1 degree in every 72 years. This comes from that book. We'll see why he sees this. Precession was known already in about 2000 BC. Good reason to believe that. I'll show you that just now. In the Gilgamesh epic, which I've referred to just a short while ago, from ancient Sumer, we've just found, I've just stated that the cosmic tree is cut down in this epic. And it was cut down by 2 heroes, Gilgamesh himself, and then a very good friend, Enkidu, that accompanied him to the Lebanon. And there they cut down this massive tree. What is interesting, they didn't only cut down the tree, these two, they also killed the bull of heaven. The bull of heaven. Now, what is the bull of heaven? Clearly, it's a bull in the heavens. And in the way it's depicted in the Gilgamesh epic, you can clearly see the reference is to Taurus. So it's the bull of heaven that is being killed, slaughtered How would that happen? How could Taurus be killed? Well, that's quite easy. Precession, slowly but steadily, when the sun is in mid-spring, is directed towards Taurus. It moves slowly, and at a certain point it moves out of Taurus. And then the bull had been killed because it's no more directed towards Taurus. So these people understood, and this is the interesting thing. The killing of the bull is the end of the era of Taurus. Now what is fascinating is the felling of the mighty tree and the killing of the bull of heaven are two sides of the same coin. The one is the axis that moves, the cosmic axis, and the other is the equinoctial precession where the sun directed at Taurus moves slowly out of Taurus. These two things are part of the same massive movement of the celestial skies due to precession. And in this epic, these two are connected. And there's only one way to understand this, is they had a good understanding of the concept of precession, of polar and equinoctial precession. They connect these two, the polar precession, the tree that was cut down, the equinoctial precession, the bull of heaven that was slaughtered. And this epic was written slightly after that date, 2000 BC. That's long, long ago. So why are there two trees in the garden? In the book of Genesis we read there are actually two trees, not one. That's significant, isn't it? Why two trees? How did they get to that? The one, the tree of knowledge, and the other, the tree of life. Interesting, if you read carefully, you'll find both are in the middle of the garden. Both in the middle. Now this refers to two polar stars. There are actually two polar stars. The one is Tiban. Tiban was the polar star in about 2800 BC. And the other is Polaris, which is currently the polar star. It implies two cosmic trees. Two polar stars implies two cosmic trees. Tiban in about 285, Polaris in our day. Now the second polar star, namely Polaris, does not lie too far from the first on this heavenly circle, which the cosmic axis has to move through in a period of 26,000 years. Remember, it's 26,000 years. It is about 1/5 from the total circumference of the circle removed from its other. So after some time has lapsed, after 2,800, let's say 800 years, you get to about 2,000, and the Gilgamesh epic was written, you would have had a good idea where this circle is going. You could have made some easy calculations and see, okay, there's another polar star, and that's Polaris. Find the future, but you can clearly calculate that this axis will move through Polaris. The second polar star, namely Polaris, does not lie too far from the first one. I just said that. So it's quite easy to trace out this polar circuit in the northern celestial skies and in the centuries after the pole moved away from Tuban in about 2800 BC. Okay? So that's why we have two trees in the garden. They're two polar stars. So let's look at the four rivers flowing from Eden. These are the Pison, Gihon, Hiddekel, and the Euphrates. Now that refers to the Uzum. You can immediately see Izon, Uzum. The Gihon was the Gihon. You can clearly see that's the same. It was later called the Arcs after the Islamic invasion of the Caucasus, that northern mountains, the Tigris and the Euphrates. All of these originate in the areas around the Urmia Lake in the distant north of Iran, northwest. The number 4 in this context of the garden may be quite significant. Why is it? It's often used, the number 4, in reference to the 4 corners, winds or ends of the earth or of heaven. When you read through the Bible, you find these expressions on many places through the Bible. Reference to the 4 corners of the earth, corners of the heaven, the winds or the ends of the earth or of the heaven. Always 4. What does that mean? 4 directions. Okay, let's come back to that. These 4 rivers flow into the 4 directions from the mentioned geographical area, although only in the area of the upper headwaters. Later on, the Tigris and Euphrates flows towards southern Mesopotamia. Okay. So here's a geographical depiction. So here is biblical Eden from Genesis. And here's the 4 rivers. Here are the 4 rivers. The Pishon going towards the west, and the Euphrates going towards the east. Towards the south is the Tigris. The Gihon is in the north. So let's have a look at the 4 corners of the earth. The ancients projected the 4 directions into the celestial skies. So they projected the 4 directions on the earth, if you look into the 4 directions, into the celestial skies. So they believe there's a continuity between our world and the heavens. This continuity lies on a deeper level than the material. They didn't only consider the material world as we do today. On a deeper level, they believe there's some unification, a unified world. Now, the 4 corners are the 4 constellations in which the sun resides during the equinoxes and the solstice. It's during mid-spring, mid-summer, mid-autumn, and mid-winter. So in the framework of the starry cosmos, these 4 constellations on the circular belt in which the sun moves from the zodiac defined the earth. So that's where the 4 corners of the earth originated. The 4 directions projected into the celestial skies, into this larger framework of the cosmos, with the cosmic axis showing which is above the earth, which is below the earth. So they're not speaking about the physical earth, material earth. They have this cosmic concept of the earth stretching into 4 directions, or defined by 4 directions. This brings us to the pillars of the earth. The pillars, the 4 pillars of the earth, are just another way to speak about the 4 corners of the earth. It's just the same thing, it's just a slightly different way to say the same thing. In Job, we read, God shakes the earth out of its place, and its pillars tremble. What does it mean? It seems so poetic. Yes, the pillars, standing on the pillars, God shakes it, it falls. What does it mean? Another place he says, the pillars of heaven. Carefully. You see, he shakes the earth and its pillars tremble. And he says, the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his rebuke. Sometimes the pillars of earth, sometimes the pillars of heaven. It's the same thing. The pillars has the 4 stable points. Why is it so stable? Sometimes of the earth, sometimes of the heaven. Why is it so stable? Why is it pillars? It's very stable points. It does not really change for about 2,200 years. For that period, those particular constellations in the celestial skies, the sun is directed towards those particular constellations. It doesn't change for 2,200 years. But then, after that period has lapsed, the sun moved into another constellation. And those pillars, those stable points, tremble, and those pillars in the 7th sense breaks down. That which is absolutely stable. So that's where the idea of the pillars of the earth originates. Nowadays, some people take it literal. They think the earth, the ancients thought the earth was flat, stood on 4 kind of physical pillars somewhere in the cosmos. They have no idea what the ancients actually understood by these concepts. So definitely they didn't see the earth as flat, material earth as flat, because they defined it by 4 corners on the earth, corners of the earth, but sometimes it's said as the 4 corners of the heavens. It was in the cosmos, far in the cosmos. And this is where these 4 points are, which is also the 4 pillars. Once you understand it, it's so simple. It's actually so simple. How can anybody take this literal and think the ancients thought there are 4 pillars underneath this? Now, if you think the ancients were stupid people, not intelligent, had the simple ideas, then we can think so. But what we find today, they were very sophisticated people They had sophisticated concepts. They defined the earth and our world in terms of a wider celestial content, the cosmos. And all these things had a particular meaning to them. Now, why does the pillars tremble? This is due to the precession of the equinoxes. So when the sun moves out of the four constellations that define the four pillars into the next four constellations in accordance with the precession of the equinoxes. For example, when the sun moved in the spring equinox from the constellation of Taurus to Aries in about 2002, this is not so clearly defined. That's another topic, but slowly but steadily it moved from Taurus. The reason why I take that date, 2000, was because we find this idea in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which means day understood in those terms. Later in the time of Jesus, it moved to Pisces. It was one of the reasons why the feast became a symbol of the Christians, because it was closely connected to the era of Pisces. Okay, so now we have a good understanding of the pillars of the earth, we understand where it originates, and in the next lecture we'll look at the mountain of God. What does that mean? Okay, thank you.